We're here this morning at another one of our jobs in Didsbury in Manchester. Again, this is a loft conversion, but this has been done the traditional method, where we have the RSJs in the loft, timbers, so it takes a lot more labour intensive and a lot more time than the more modern system that we've now started promoting. So let's go and have a look inside the loft on this one. Right, we're up here now on the scaffold and you can see where the lads have had to strip back all the tiles. In comparison with the other system where we only had to take a couple of tiles off to get the steels in, here it's a lot bigger job. First thing that you'll notice here is the RSJs. The RSJs there with the timber bolted to it as well. This is what you've got to get up, and this is what we didn't have to do on the other because we were just pushing the steels through. But we'll just have a look at how this is constructed in comparison. So first and foremost, it's harder to keep it watertight. The lads are doing a good job here because they've got the big sheet on and everything. But that's always a consideration if you haven't got a scaffold top on, so it's all enclosed. So we'll have a look inside here now in comparison. So we're up now in what I would call a traditional loft. This house was built about 1910, 1920. When they used to support the roofs, they used to have the big purlins in like this, and these were supported off little brick pillars. That basically, that wall goes right the way down to the foundations through various walls in the house. So all this is coming out, and this here, the actual party wall is that one, but I'm just showing this as an example. The RSJ that's going to go up there at the ridge, you'll have to sit in like this, and basically that's why these traditional lofts are covered by the party wall up, because you're actually building into the party wall. So you can see here the steel, the RSJ, has actually been sat into the wall and put on a steel plate. And then the timbers have been inserted inside and bolted. So you can imagine how much labour intensified this is, because that wall's fitted into the party wall. We'll go to other areas of the site which explains about the party wall art, but this is where you have to get a notice, an agreement with your neighbour that you can actually work on that party wall, and with it being of a structural nature, that's why it has to be compliant. So now we're looking at here, these are the trimmers that go again front to back. This is what the dormer walls are going to be sat on. So you can see again all the construction details. If you look over there, you've got one of them, which is a joist hanger. We can see that bolted and everything, and that basically bolts to the timber that's inset into the RSJ, and then the joists are put that way, and they're above the ceiling joists again, so you don't get any transmission between the new floor and the ceiling underneath. So what we're going to have here, we've got the RSJ, we've got the timber bolted into it, and then these are the joist hangers. These actually go that way, and then you get the timber going above the ceiling here. So it's a lot of manual work, and when you ask, is the new system easier to install, labour-wise, it's a lot less intensive. The materials are more expensive, but one offsets against the other, so it's really good value for money. This is the ridge beam, the existing ridge beam, and there's going to be an RSJ that goes underneath that and sits underneath it. So again, the RSJ will be here, there'll be a steel plate there to take it, and that'll span. So you can imagine how difficult that is physically manhandling that and getting it in. Where the other system is just bolting your rafter and your roof coming out for your dormer together in the way it's been designed and painted, and there's no big steels going in that way. There's no steels going either side to hold up the floor. It suspends by the steel work. So on this job we're on day 5. So if you can compare with the new system again, that had the joists in, the floor in, the dormer constructed, basically ready for putting insulation and the services in. So you can see it saves at least 2-3 weeks off the job. And it's a lot more pleasant for the lads to actually install, if you like, because it's just so easy. But we need to show you the traditional way of doing it, otherwise you wouldn't be able to compare yourself. We're here now on day 10 of the construction phase of the traditional loft conversion. compared with the other scheme, this one lags behind a bit, purely because there's so much labour intensive work that they've got to do. They've had to get the steels up, which we seen last time we visited, and the steels here, there's a good view of them because the timber is then bolted to the steel. The steel's carried by the party wall and the gable wall, where it sits in on the inner skin of the party wall on the owner's property, so it doesn't protrude through next doors. You can see here this is the ceiling joist, and there's a gap between the ceiling joists and the underside of the RSJ. That means all the weight and everything that's transmitted in here doesn't get transmitted in through the rest of the building structure, so it's completely suspended to carry the load, whether it be the dead load, the build load, or the live load, which is what the room's been used for. So these have had to be put in. We're going to go inside in a minute and we can have a look at where it's up to and what work's been done. It doesn't look as far along as the other modern construction, purely because this isn't a Meccano kit. This has got to be built piece for piece. The timbers have got to be cut to length on site. You can see the swarf here from where the steel RSJs have been drilled, so they can actually bolt the timbers in. So we're going to go inside now and we'll see a little bit more of where we're up to with this. We're now inside the loft, and you can see it's not as neat as the other one because the other property was about 15 years old and it was a truss roof construction in the loft, and it was nice and clean. This has got, this was built about 1915 to 20, and there's a lot of dust, soot, everything you can think of up here. But basically what's happened here is that the steels have gone through on either side, like we looked at before, the RSJs. Then the timbers bolted to the RSJ, and then the floor joists are then fixed by the joist hangers. So the floor's all been put in the construction. Usually you'll find that these timbers can be different size, because when the structural engineer is working out the sizes, this is the opening for where the staircase is going to go, and basically we have to make the opening like we did on the other one. But if we're actually carrying here, you'll see that the joists have overlapped on the load bearing wall. That means that because the span isn't as far as going from right at one RSJ to the other, these joists can be smaller in size, and that can be crucial when you're actually trying to get the height in the loft. So with the building regulations, you've got to have your 2 meters if you get off your stair. So with this isn't far off that, but we'd measure it to make sure we had that. If, for instance, that we didn't have enough height here, what we can generally do is where you're coming up the stairway is just drop the ceiling in that landing area, so you have at least a minimum of 2 meters as you step off the stair onto the loft floor. So that's what basically we do when we're designing it. We're checking that we can actually get the head height for building regulation approval. Once you come off the stairs, I mean this height here and everything, it basically can be whatever it is, because there's no building regulations that restricts the height after you get off and on the staircase. A lot of the work this week will have been spent getting this steel up, which is the replacement ridge beam. Again, the timber's bolted to this, and then this is the side where the dormer roof is going to come off, and this is where the rafters, the existing rafters, join the timber within the steelwork. Here now we see the ridge beam, and this is the party wall. The party wall has 2 skins, one on your neighbour's side and one on your side. This actually sits on your side, and then it's sat onto a concrete padstone. This takes the weight of the roof and it then dissipates through the existing wall and down out through the foundations. So this is something that people don't realise, that you have to go to your neighbour and say, we're going to serve notice. So just read up about the party wall, lads. It's worth looking at, or look at our website to find out more about it. But that's how that's carrying the load and way through. You'll notice over here on the other side, this is an acro, which is basically a steel support. This will have been put in, it's carried on the floor there, carried underneath the RSJ, and it's sat on the padstone. So this would have been put in while the cement and mortar's going off around there. On the lower ones, the ones that are carrying the floor, we usually put a steel plate in because you haven't got enough room for putting the padstone in. So it's just different ways we do it. A lot of homeowners, when they're looking at if they've got enough room in the loft, they don't realise that this is a ceiling joist, and the reason why it's called a ceiling joist is it's there to hold up the ceiling. They're not big enough to put a floor on and then to be walking up and down on. Basically, they're just not big enough, so the floor would bounce up and down, or the plaster would crack, and building regulations certainly wouldn't approve it. So this is why we have to go to all this trouble of putting all this steel work in and just strengthening everything up and sizing the joists. I've already said this is a load bearing wall. This goes from the foundations right up throughout the house, and then we're lucky because we can overlap the timbers, and that then keeps the size of the timbers down. Another thing we're just going to point out, you might consider when you're having a loft conversion to get your whole roof re-roofed, because obviously this has been opened up so we can fit the dormer in. But here you can see the old rosemary tiles that are fitted directly to the battens and then to the rafters, because what we have to do with this construction now, we have to add timber to build this out, the rafter, so we can get the airspace in here, so we can get the airflow and the insulation in to meet the current building regulation standards. So again, it's worth thinking, should you at this stage have the full roof done, so you can have the breathable membranes in, and basically just save yourself money, because you've already got the scaffold up and everything now. So when you're working out your budget and everything, just ask the builder how much would it be to have the whole roof completely done at this time, because you'll find usually it'll work in your favour. Yeah, luckily here we're at the loft that we're doing with this traditional construction, and then with Andy, the homeowner. Now, when we planned this, Andy, we were struggling with the roof height, or the loft height, but we've resolved that now. We've had to drop the landing. Have you found it? We're in the second week. Have you been interrupted by the builders or anything?
Nah, luckily that hasn't been an issue, not been interrupted by them, because the guys are working from the outside, so straight up the scaffolding and onto the top. So
that's something to think about. A lot of builders will tell you that, you know, you've got to break eggs to make omelettes, and a lot of them will cut a section in your first floor ceiling and then put a ladder up there, and they'll be working through the front door and up and down the house, and they can be doing that for 6 or 7 weeks, and there's no need for it, because on the specification, if you actually say to them that you want them to work through the roof and not through your house, it'll save you a lot of inconvenience, and you won't have as much mess for the duration of the works. So as I say, it's just been nice to get hold of Andy. You've been happy with the builders and everything?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, brilliant guys, and I think that makes a big difference to deal with people that you can have a chat with and have a brew with and generally get on with.
The thing is with here, when we actually went out to tender, I mean, we must have gone out to maybe 9 builders from our network and from builders that we actually was recommended to us, and the difference in prices was well over £15,000. So it's important to shop around and look and do your own due diligence. When you find a builder that you quite like and it seems to be the right price, our recommendation is that you always go and look at previous jobs they've done, or try and find builders that have worked for family and friends. So the noise has started again now because they're drilling upstairs, so we'll leave it there. But thanks for giving us the time this afternoon, Andy. And as I say, we'll see if Andy's still smiling at the end of it. Because Andy's been at home today, we've managed to come inside the house, and now we're on the first floor. Above here is where obviously the stairs are going to be going and everything, but you can see that there's no mess been made in the existing property. And again, what we're trying to reassure homeowners is when you're actually having a loft conversion, the builders can work in and out of the roof space off the scaffold. Instead of a lot of builders will say, oh, we have to bring all the stuff up through your staircase and then open a big hole in the ceiling, so then you're opening into the building side. That is basically unnecessary. So if you're going to have a loft conversion done, there's a way to do it where you don't have to open up your house and make it all a building site on week 1 or 2. It's quite the norm for builders to work through the roof and not inconvenience you.